Hi, Sarah here. Thanks for joining me live again today. Look, happy Thursday. Um, can you believe how fast this week has gone? But it's the silly season, isn't it? And I don't know about you, but it's been pretty busy lately. Trying to wrap things up for the year and keeping the kids organised and preparing for our little holiday over Christmas that has been year in the making, and it's safe to say I'm just a little bit excited. My whole family together in one place for the first time this year. Can't wait. But that's not why I'm here today. Today, I want to share with you a conversation I had the other day with a friend, actually a friend of a friend, or actually probably more accurately, an acquaintance at a social gathering, and it centered around builders' margins, and builders' margins are actually quite a contentious issue for many homeowners. Um, so, but before we start, just quickly, if you're watching live, I'd love it if you'd pop a hi in the comments, and if you're watching the replay, pop in replay, hashtag replay. It really helps me understand how better to help you. So also pop any questions you have in the comments below, and I'll answer them as best I can. Right, so this guy was not happy about his builder's markup, and he felt he was getting ripped off by having to pay it, and he felt that he'd be better off saving the money and organising some of the trades himself, and at face value he actually put up quite a good argument. But look, isn't there always a but? There's definitely a but in this story. Look, I had a few things to say, but first I need to clarify something, and this is around what a builder's margin actually is. So briefly, a builder's margin is the percentage added to the cost price of a building project, and this cost price includes things like materials and labour, the labour required to complete the job, and also this labour covers managing the job, like organising the trades and organising the delivery and getting pricing, and in addition to the physical work that happens on site. And this margin also covers all the business running costs including the profit for the builder, of course. And but you need to remember that building is a business, and every business needs and should be making a profit, because there's red flags if they're not. And the margin is not all money that goes straight into the builder's pocket to finance their next holiday or whatnot. Look, builders typically charge homeowners around 10 to 20%, even a 25% markup on materials and labour, but also on top of their subcontractors' work as well. And subcontractors are typically called subbies in the building trade here in Australia, so we'll use that title from here on in. And it should be said that this margin actually can vary from builder to builder depending on the size of their business and the type of building service that they offer. And therein lies a bit of an issue a lot of people have with this. If they hear that someone's paying 15%, they don't want to pay 25%. Okay, so back to my story. This guy wanted to pay his builder's subbies directly. And by the subbies, I'm talking about the plumber and the electrician, so pretty major trades, to avoid his builder's margin. And he also wanted to supply a lot of the fixtures and fittings directly too, but that's a tale for another day. We'll talk about that another time. But it's not as simple as that. So I want to share with you what you might be getting into as a result of making this type of decision if you were to go down that path yourself. Because I think it's actually really important to know and also to understand what this really means for you and in this case his project, to understand what you're getting into, but also what you're giving up by going down this route. Because one thing this guy, and actually many homeowners too for that matter, overlook or actually aren't even aware of, it can be a combination of the two, or a lot of people don't have much experience of building, and so run into all sorts of grief. Mainly because, and they overlook this stuff because they're so focused on the dollar savings that they're making. But the important thing to remember is that when your builder pays his or her subbies and marks up their services, then he or she is essentially taking responsibility for those services, which means if something goes wrong, then it's the builder's problem. And you can count on the fact that the fact that what is required to fix it will be covered under the contract that you have with your builder. But if you pay the subby directly yourself to avoid that markup and something goes wrong, then it can be up to you to fix it or to solve the problem essentially. And so by avoiding the margin, you're essentially taking on, well, risk. So look, here's a quick example off the top of my head. Okay, so let's say you're renovating your home and decide to pay, let's say the painter $3,000 directly to avoid your builder's, say 15% markup, which means you'll be saving around $450. And by the way, this is a fictitious example, and in terms of the figures that I'm using, I'm making them up to make it easy for my brain to perform maths on the fly. So forgive me if I stuff up. Maths is not my strong point. Right, so in my example, you've essentially just saved $450 simply by paying the painter directly, which sounds pretty good. And actually, it's a bit of a no-brainer, or feels like one, doesn't it? Look, I'm sure there's plenty of things that $450 could be better in your mind allocated to that might suit you better, like a light fitting maybe, or even that rug you've got your eye on. But what if? What if 6 months down the track you realise that the painter neglected to put in the mould additive? This is in your bathroom, by the way. In the paint for your bathroom, and it needs to be repainted. It's now your problem. You have to call them up. You have to be home when they can make it. You have to deal with the mess. You may have to fork out more money to get it repainted, depending on the quote or the contract that you had with the painter. And it maybe you might have even forgotten to ask them to put the additive in the first place. Who knows? And it might not seem a huge deal when you're dealing with a bit of paint, and it might just be annoying. And so you might decide in this instance that, you know what, it's worth the risk. But if you look at a different, more risky type of work, let's say you've paid the plumber directly to install the plumbing in the same bathroom, and once he's done his work, the insulation's gone in, the wall sheeting's been installed, and that beautiful tile you chose has been, popped up on your wall and your floors. And then, unbeknownst to you, something wasn't installed properly, a gasket maybe, and water begins to leak. And it might take a while for the leak to show itself. Water's like that. But the end result is that the tiles need to be removed, as does the insulation and the wall sheeting, in order to address and to fix the problem. And if the water's made its way elsewhere, for example, like a floor below, well, the sky's the limit as to what this problem is going to end up being. Now, who's going to fix all of that damage? You, the plumber? Who's paying for it all? It won't be covered under your builder's warranty because you took responsibility for that subby's work. And depending on the contract or the quote that you have with the subby, it can get really, really grey. It might not even be covered by your insurance either, in some cases. So whereas the subby might sort his work out, it's all the other subsequent stuff that needs to be done as a result of it. And the tiling that's potentially under the builder's contract, they're not going to pay to get that fixed. Then there's all the rest of it. The sky can be the limit with this stuff. So, you know, you might have to chase everyone down, you know, be there while all the various trades come back and you know, work out how to protect your house as, you know, damaged materials are being hauled in and out and new ones are coming in. And it doesn't sound like a lot of fun to me for a $450 saving. So if your plumber charged you roughly, you know, back to my dodgy figures, you're roughly $3,000 to do the plumbing work in the bathroom, that's only $450 saving worth, you know, versus a massive headache in which you potentially find yourself. And look, you know, I think you need to ask yourself the question, what would you do if something goes wrong? Because unfortunately it can and it does. So with those more risk-laden tasks, including things that, you know, that involve water, like plumbing and tiles in the shower and waterproofing and roofing and stuff like that, you probably need to really think carefully about whether that markup or avoiding the markup is worth the risk, potential risk of taking on the risk yourself. And, you know, you can also view that as a cheap, the margin as a cheap insurance policy against something going wrong. And look, the same can be said for electrical work and even structural work too, because, you know, there's a lot of implications if something goes wrong with those that can be far-reaching and very, very expensive. So, you know, potentially those less risky tasks, I suppose, like painting, you might feel that it's worth the risk to you. And anyway, hopefully that gives you food for thought. And look, just to finish, don't forget also that on a building site, time is money. So if work you are organising delays other work under the builder's umbrella, then that can end up costing you too. So the saving that you're making may not actually be much of a saving if other things out of your control happen as well. So think long and hard before making the decision to avoid the builder's margin, because there's often consequences that can happen that are out of your control that can end up costing you more. And if you're not careful and aware in the building industry, it can seem really laden with pitfalls, and look, it can be, but if you know what to look for, they're pretty easy to spot, and if you can see them, then you can more easily avoid them. And because of this, we've put together a free guide that highlights 10 of the most common renovation pitfalls, or new build pitfalls, if you want to call them that, and we share with you how you can easily avoid them. So if a home renovation project or a new build one is in your future, check it out. I'll pop the link in the comments below so you can have a look at it. Hope you've enjoyed this video. See you next week at the same time, 10 a.m. Thursday, Australian Eastern Standard Time, which is 10 a.m. for our southern friends. Until then, have a great day.